From Ladakh, the story tells that, long ago, in the kingdom of Ling, a half-mythical place in the highlands, the people were suffering across the high snow deserts of Ladakh, in the upper Indus Valley, in the small monasteries perched on cliffs above 13,000-foot passes, the village storytellers still know an epic that is, by length, perhaps the longest oral poem ever composed by human beings. It is called the Jesa of Ling. It is sometimes called the Epic of King Jesa. A complete recitation of the epic, in its full length, takes a single bard many days, sometimes many weeks. There are many versions. Some collected versions are over 1,000,000 lines long, almost 10 times the length of the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. The epic is shared across Tibet, Mongolia, Bhutan, parts of Sikkim, and the high Buddhist regions of India, but Ladakh has perhaps the most beloved oral tradition. In Ladakhi villages, on long winter nights when the snow seals the doors and the yaks are sheltered, the elder bards sing of Jesa. The story tells that, long ago, in the kingdom of Ling, a half-mythical place in the highlands, the people were suffering greatly. Demons were attacking their cattle. Snow was falling out of season. The kings were corrupt. The lamas were lost. The protective gods of Buddhism had withdrawn. The compassionate bodhisattva in the heavens looked down and were moved to pity. They held a council. They decided to send down one of their own, a young heavenly being, to be born in Ling as a human king, who would defeat the demons and restore the kingdom. They chose a being named Joru. He agreed. He took human birth in the kingdom of Ling, in a poor family, as a small dark-skinned boy with a strange laugh. Joru was, on the outside, a singularly unimpressive child. He had patchy skin. He had wild hair. He laughed at inappropriate moments. He preferred playing in the dirt to studying scripture. His relatives despised him. His uncle, an old chieftain, considered him a disgrace. The whole kingdom of Ling, except his mother, treated him as a kind of village idiot. They had no idea he was a bodhisattva. Joru bore it patiently. He played his little games. He hid his power. He learned the geography of the kingdom by walking everywhere as an apparently aimless child. He memorized every cliff, every passage, every river, every house. By the time he was 12, he knew the kingdom of Ling more thoroughly than its own king. At about the age of 15, the king of Ling died without a clear heir. The nobles announced an unusual succession contest. The throne of Ling, they said, would go to the warrior who won a great horse race across the kingdom. Whoever crossed the finish line first would become king. Knights came from across the highlands. They polished their armor. They groomed their finest steeds. The race began. Halfway through, Joru, who had been sitting at the back of the field on a sad-looking little brown pony, suddenly transformed. His pony grew. It became a magnificent black warhorse with a wind-blown mane. Joru himself transformed. His patchy skin turned smooth. His wild hair became a crown of dark coils. He grew. He shone. He overtook every other rider on the course. He crossed the finish line first by a great distance. The nobles, stunned, recognized that the village idiot they had ignored for 15 years was actually a bodhisattva. He was crowned king of Ling on the spot. From that day, he took a new name. He was no longer Joru. He was Jesa. Jesa's reign was filled with great campaigns. He fought a series of demonic kings who threatened the kingdom from various directions. He defeated the demon king of the north in the dark of winter. He defeated the demon king of the east in a long battle on a frozen lake. He defeated the demon king of the south in the deepest summer. He defeated the demon king of the west by tricking him into believing that Jason himself was already dead. Each campaign is a separate book of the epic, with its own subplots, its own ministers, its own warriors. Jason's wife Lady Bragmo was carried away by one of these demon kings. Jason fought a whole campaign to recover her. The bards say he loved her so much that he stopped sleeping for 9 months while she was gone. But the epic is not just about battles. It is also, perhaps mostly, about wisdom. Jason is a Buddhist king. He kills demons, but he does not hate them. He pities them. He often pauses, mid-battle, to give a teaching to his enemy. He gives teachings on impermanence. He gives teachings on the suffering of all beings. He gives teachings on the impossibility of holding on to victory. The villains, in many versions, are converted by these mid-battle sermons. They give up their demonic ways. They take Buddhist vows. They become protectors of the Dharma. Jason absorbs them into his own court. By the end of his reign, his palace is filled with former demons who now serve as the kingdom's most loyal guards. The story of Jason spread across the high Himalayan world. In Tibet, he became the model of the Dharma king. In Mongolia, he was identified with the Mongol war gods and was honored at the shrines of the steppe. In Bhutan, he was painted on the walls of Dzongs. But in Ladakh, the cult of Jason took a particular form. The Ladakhi villagers identified strongly with the early Joru, the patchy, mocked, village-idiot boy whom everybody underestimated. They saw themselves in him. They were, after all, the people of a poor, distant, often overlooked kingdom in the back rooms of the Himalayas. They lived at 13,000 feet. They were forgotten by the wealthy plains. And yet, their own land had once produced, or so they believed, the greatest king of all the Himalayan world. The bards of Ladakh became famous. Some of them, the old monks of Hemis monastery will tell you, could recite the full Jason epic for 30 straight nights, sleeping only a few hours at dawn. Today, very few of those bards survive. The art of reciting the Jason epic has been disappearing across the Himalayas. Some villages in Ladakh still have 1 or 2 old men who know parts of the epic. They are, almost all of them, in their 70s and 80s. They learned the epic from their grandfathers, who learned it from their grandfathers. The Indian government has begun, in recent years, to record their recitations. The Sahitya Akademi has published partial transcripts. Researchers from Leh University have catalogued the surviving versions. But the bards are honest with you. They say, the recitation cannot be read from a book. The Jason epic, in its full magic, only works when it is sung by an old man in a stone house on a winter night, with the snow piling up outside, and the listeners crowded around a butter lamp, hearing how a boy nobody believed in saved a kingdom that had stopped believing in itself. Tomorrow's story comes from another corner of India. Subscribe to walk with us through the folklore of every region, in your language.